Hey everybody, welcome to Brainiac Baseball's 1984 Detroit Tigers season replay. This is our first video for the 1984 season. This will be considered our off-season free agent signings and trades review. This is the first time we've done a video quite like this, and if you're new to the channel, this is the fifth season that I'm playing in a Detroit Tigers season replay. I wanted to try to take the 1980 Tigers, the year that Sparky Anderson arrived on the Tigers as manager, and try to get them to the World Series in the same time frame that the Tigers made it in real life. And of course, the Tigers won the 1984 World Series. I'm from Detroit. If you're not familiar, my name is Charles, and I am from Detroit. I grew up there, and of course, I'm a big fan of all Detroit sports. And I now live in Tucson, Arizona, and I've been playing Baseball Mogul, some version of Baseball Mogul, since the early 2000s. I want to say 2002, but I can't remember exactly anymore. And so when the pandemic started a couple of years ago, I thought I would create these videos for my friends who also play Baseball Mogul, for entertainment purposes only. I didn't actually think it'd become so popular. It has become so popular now that, I feel like I have to have a big off-season review and preparation for the next season. I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun for me. I hope it's fun for you. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We have 4 other seasons of the Detroit Tigers season replay that you can go back and take a look at. The 1980 season, the very first year, I was really just getting used to the whole format of recording myself and putting it out there on YouTube. So I would say if you're discovering this now and you want to go back and take a look, I would start maybe with the 1980 season, about game 64. That's when things got into full swing, and I think from that point on, if you're a new person to this channel and you're interested in seeing how things have progressed over the years, that would be a good place to start. Game 64 of the 1980 season, or you could feel free to jump in wherever you like. The roster has changed over the years. There are still some of the Detroit Tigers staples from that season. We'll take a look at them shortly. All we're doing in this video here today is taking a look at what has happened since the end of the World Series for the 1983 season. So if you take a look here, you'll see March 6th, we'll have the American League East division preview. March 13th, the American League West. March 20th, the National League East. March 27th, the National League West. And then opening day begins on April 1st. Now, I am in the middle of doing a 1969 Seattle Pilots what-if scenario where we're playing every game for the Seattle Pilots in the one season that they existed, with the plan to keep them and not the Milwaukee Brewers alive until 1977, when the Mariners would have begun their career. And then, so instead of the Mariners coming around, we're going to have the Brewers begin in 1977 instead of the Mariners. It'll just be the Seattle Pilots. So it's the what-if scenario. What if Seattle never moved to Milwaukee? So those two, the Pilots series and the beginning of the 1984 Detroit Tigers season replay will run concurrently for about a month, which is a lot of work for me. But my goal is eventually to get them aligned so that there's no overlapping and I can just focus on one or the other. Okay, so there is the schedule. Let's go ahead and take a look at the transactions list here. You'll see that the Mets were the winners in our sim from 1983. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at all the off-season transactions. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that is so boring. But you may be right. I mean, this isn't for everybody. I fully admit that. But we've got to a point where we're in the beginning of our 5th season of replay, and a lot of players are changing teams, and that does play a big part of what will happen for my Tigers team in the 1984 season, the year that they actually won the World Series. They beat the San Diego Padres that year. And so if you take a look here, this is how we're going to start this review and preview, I guess, by taking a look at the Mets here. They won the World Series over the Oakland Athletics. Kind of a real sleeper, the A's, in 1984. I'm not really sure how they made it to the World Series with the roster that they had, but nonetheless, they did lose to the New York Mets in 1983 in our replay. And you'll see these are the names that won a World Series ring. If you're old hat, if you're someone who's followed this since the beginning, and I know there are many of you, you already know what you're looking at here. If you happen to be new to the channel, the Mets won our 1983 World Series, and these are all players who contributed for that squad. Now, players have changed rosters since the World Series, and that's where we're going to start off as you take a look here at the players on this New York Mets roster. We will keep scrolling down. You'll see the additional names for the Mets. And then we're going to get to the off-season transactions. Okay, so Doug Bear retired in 1983 in our game. Of course, he actually was on the Tigers World Series team in 1984. But nonetheless, Doug Bear has retired. In addition, so did Gary Bear. No relation. Gary Bear, he was actually on Milwaukee in real life, but he was on the Padres here, and he retired. If you're not familiar with how this looks, I use actual baseball cards to represent the ball player from that season. So I've already updated all the 1984 Topps cards. If they were a player who was playing that year, you'll see that they've actually already been added. For Gary Bear, his last card was the Topps 1978 card. Although he did pitch in one game in our sim that we started in 1980, he pitched in one game in 1981. So if that helps you get familiarized, if you're a new person, welcome. And that's kind of how we go about it here. Let's see. Then I believe we get right to the off season, and let's take a look at what we've got going on here. Now, we're going to start here with contracts. We're just going to blow through these. These are contracts that were given to players on their own team. This holds very little interest to me, but if you're new, we're going to scroll through this somewhat quickly, and you'll see these are all players who were re-signed to their own teams, and starting with Atlanta. It goes in alphabetical order, so you'll see they have extensions here. We don't need to go down all of them, but of course, Lynn Jones was on the Tigers. We traded him. He has worked his way to Atlanta at this point. So these are all re-signings with their previous team. And of course, I know, and you know, we all know that a lot of these players did not actually play for the team listed here. Over the 4 years that we've played the sim, players have been traded on their own. They've been re-signed. Of course, players have been drafted to new teams. And so you're just looking at players re-signing, getting extensions, and the dollar value on the right here. Now we're at Baltimore. We're going to pick up the pace. Baltimore re-signs Ron LaFleur. Ron LaFleur was actually out of baseball by 1984. Jim Palmer re-signed to a 2-year deal, a minimal amount. He was, of course, an awesome player, but he didn't even play in 1983 in our sim because of his ratings being so low. but he does have a 1984 card. I've updated all the cards, so if they did have a 1984 baseball card, whether it was for Topps, Donruss, or Flair, I do have it represented. If it was a minor league card, if they had one of those available, I added that as well. Everything in this, let me just say this for people who are returning. Everything is ready to go with this sim when the season starts on April 1st. That's when I'm going to start as well. The only thing I haven't done yet are the stadium effects, which I am a big proponent of, and I try to make them as accurate as possible. I have my own mathematical equation, and I think that does kind of control what happens in the ball game. And if you're not familiar, if you're someone who's brand new to my channel and watching these games and you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you go back and take a look at the 1983 season that we just completed, I do have the series set up. You can just check out the playlist. If you start at the beginning and you watch a couple of those videos, it'll all be clear to you. So there's Boston's re-signings. We're looking at the California Angels and their re-signings. Here are the Cubbies and their players who've been re-signed. The White Sox, a team that really struggled down the stretch of this season. Their re-signings. There's the Cincinnati Reds. They have won the World Series in my sim. Probably one of the most miraculous underdog teams. If they're a small market team in this baseball mogul game, they tend to play like a small market team and make it really difficult to win. That's why the Oakland A's making it to the World Series in the sim that we just completed, the 83 season, that's kind of amazing. There's only 4 players re-signed by Houston. One of them, Bruce Robbins, was a Detroit Tiger that we traded over there. We had to kind of dump him. Let's keep it going here. Kansas City. Only 3 Dodgers were re-signed. Milwaukee, Minnesota. Now that we're entering the 5th season of playing, a lot of the teams have become solvent in the sense that they have to either get rid of some of their high-end players or they tend to suffer greatly if they hang on to them too long. That's why it kind of amazed me that Oakland made it to the World Series. They are really a small market team in this game, and the fact that they made it to the World Series with a bunch of schlubs is kind of miraculous. I mean, if you go back and you watch the end of the 1983 season where we had the playoffs, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, San Diego. Once we get to the end of these contract extensions from our own team, that's when things get interesting, and we're coming up to the end of it right here. So you'll see how this will wrap up with Toronto right here, and then we are going to get to the actual off-season contracts. Coming up here any second now. Eddie Murray signed a 5-year deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. Okay. Oh, then we have arbitration award. Okay. Yeah. So these are winners and losers of arbitration. Here's the Tigers. So yes, we lost arbitration with Keith Comstock. He is a reliever on our team. Roger Weaver was our closer in 1983. You'll see that we traded him. Momentarily, George Capizzello, one of our best lefties I think I've ever had playing in a sim. We won the arbitration, or he won the arbitration, and Dave Smith, who was our closer on our team. Cappy, you'll see here momentarily, has moved on. Was the old sign and trade kind of thing. So yes, we're looking. If you look at the left here, you'll see that these are arbitration. whether they won or lost, and who was awarded. I'm waiting till April 1st to start the season. So we kind of start on time with the actual Major League Baseball. But also, I am waiting for the new version of the game to come out. I'll purchase that and update everything so that we have the newest version of the game with all the new bells and whistles. So now we've got to the award season after all the team re-signings and arbitration. You'll see that Steve Kemp won the American League MVP award. If you watched the end of last season, you already know this. But Steve Kemp is actually a New York Yankee in this game and was on the New York Yankees in 1984. You'll see that we had him on the Tigers team. He had 31 home runs last year, 137 RBIs, batted .300. If you have watched my Sims in the past, you know that's pretty damn good. Like that doesn't really happen. I don't feel like our game really. I don't feel like Baseball Mogul is the best game for recreating actual stats, but then you get like Len Matusik as the National League MVP for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he was a Philly in real life. But Len Matusik, I don't know if he ever actually played a full season. All players are updated, so they actually have their actual fielding position. Here comes the Cy Young Award. It was Teddy Higuera. He went 22-8 last year for the Brew Crew. Not that it helped them all that much, but solid player. But remember, we started the sim in 1980, so we've played 4 full seasons. And Teddy Higuera was then technically a rookie in our 1980 sim, even though he never actually pitched in the majors until 1984 in real life. So he's already has 53 wins under his belt before he ever actually played in the actual major leagues. And that's what makes this fun for me. As J.R. Richard was a National League Cy Young Award winner, 22 wins. Again, we started in 1980, so you can see what they've done in the time we've begun our sim. Of course, J.R. Richard had his stroke, was out of baseball after the 82 season. So now everything that we do with J.R. Richard is prolonging his actual career. And that's another fun thing about this game that I enjoy. And believe me, there's plenty of things that I could complain to you about, but that's not how I want to get things started. And then we have the Gold Glove winners. Who is Stephon Weaver? He's a pitcher for the Yankees. He was a rookie in 1980. I had cards created. Special thanks to Jeremy DeJong, who has actually created cards for this channel. I even have some for sale. All proceeds go to him. They are on my Mercari page. Here are the Gold Glove winners: Stephon Weaver, Ron Hassey for the Yankees, Dave Stapleton on Seattle at first, Juan Bonilla of the Indians. Yes, George Brett is on the Tigers. If you didn't already know that, if you haven't watched my sim. Roy Smalley on Boston, Tony Brewer, longtime minor leaguer who went to the World Series with the Oakland A's. Dan Pasqua won for the Indians, but he's actually on a different team now. I already forgot what team he re-signed with. Not re-signed, but was a free agent signing. Mike Davis in right field. Now we're taking a look at the National League Gold Glove winners. I mean, a bunch of schlubs. Not Gary Templeton. He was a good player. And players who are never on their real team. But that's what the beauty of playing this game. The American League Rookie of the Year was Ron Allen for the White Sox. Oh, let's take a look at what he did. Here he is, his rookie numbers. Of course, he was part of the Detroit Tigers World Series team in 1984 in the sense that he got a few at-bats that year. And, of course, he went to Japan, had that big fight where he was chasing the guy around with the bat. But there's his rookie numbers. He had 36 home runs. I mean, yes, is that realistic? Of course not. But it is what I find fun about this game. The National League Rookie of the Year was Russ Morman for the Montreal Expos. You see him here with his 1987 Topps card. That was actually his rookie season in real life, so he's way ahead of schedule. And he put up some pretty good numbers for the Montreal Expos. That's what I love about this game. It can be very unpredictable that way. Now we get to the other off-season signings, and this is where things I think get interesting. I apologize. If I've already lost you, I get it. This is not for everybody. But if you play this game, or if you've really followed this series for all 4 seasons that we've completed, you know that this is kind of the fun part. Because of playing the baseball games, you have very little control over what happens. But I enjoy this part. These are all the players that retired. Nobody here that you're going to get excited about. Bob Babcock of Texas. We lit him up quite a bit. Mike Willis of Toronto. These are schlubs. Aurelio Rodriguez retired at age 35. Mike Jorgensen. Chris Chambliss retired. Dan Briggs. Mike Ivey. And then here we go with the off-season signings and trades. So you saw that George Capizzello, he is a Tiger, and he was great for us. Let's get it all set up here. This is a little bit out of order, but we traded George Capizzello. Here he is here, and a card that I had created for our game. He was an actual all-star for us in 1983. We traded him to the Braves for none other than Ken Smith, who you're like, who? Ken Smith. Oh, wait, hang on. This is out of order, right? To the Braves. Okay, so George Capizzello went to the Braves for Ken Smith. No. This is out of order. I apologize. This shouldn't be this difficult. Am I missing something here? To Detroit for Roger Weaver. Oh, okay. So we traded Roger Weaver. Okay, I apologize. What happened is George Capizzello, I sold to Atlanta for $130,000. That's what happened. Because we were short on cash, and we needed that money to make some things happen. Then I traded Roger Weaver, who was our closer. This is a card created just for our channel by Jeremy DeJong. Hopefully he'll be back and making some cards for us this year. So we re-signed Roger Weaver, and then we traded him to the Blue Jays, and in return, we got Ken Smith, who was split time between Atlanta and Toronto and hit the most home runs. Combined, 39 home runs. That would have led all of baseball if he had been in just one league. I don't know if Ken Smith is going to hit 39 or more home runs for us in Tiger Stadium, but we needed someone who had some power. And so I traded our closer, Roger Weaver. He had 28 saves. He had 4 Blueys last year. Not much of a strikeout pitcher. Probably walked more than he should. Of course, all 4 of these seasons were our sim seasons, and you can see what he did over that period. I think in 81, he spent some time in the minors. And so anyway, we traded him to Toronto, and they're looking to trade him already. Okay, so there's that. Cappy was traded to Atlanta, and then Ken Smith was traded to Detroit for Roger Weaver. They're a little out of order here, but I think that straightens out the rest of the way. So let's continue. Gary Templeton signs a 5-year, $1.2 million deal to go play for the Royals, going from St. Louis to Kansas City. So that's kind of amazing, right? Tommy Herr signs a 4-year deal with the Baltimore Orioles, coming over from St. Louis, another St. Louis player. We've got Ken Oberkfell, who also on St. Louis, but now signed with the San Francisco Giants. You take a look at his stats. Definitely a guy who hits a ton of doubles. He had 58 doubles in our first sim season in 1980. Signed a $1.4 million deal for 5 years. Pete Ladd's reliever signing with Baltimore. John Urea signs with Houston. These are not big. Steve Macko, who of course died in real life well before this. His last year in the majors was 81. I think he died of leukemia, I believe. But his career lives on in our sim. He is now back to the Chicago Cubs after 3 years in Houston. And Gene Pence, who's a reliever, signs with Kansas City. I find a lot of the teams that are signing contracts early in the offseason are the ones who have the most money to burn, while other teams wait for the prices to come down. The Padres signed Rick Sutcliffe, who is coming off a 12-win season for the Padres. Oh, wait, do we not have a card for Sutcliffe? So maybe I haven't updated the cards yet for the Padres. I will look into that. I'm sure that he had a real card in the 1984 season. Topps card, anyway. All right. And then we have Mike Lacoste re-signing, I think, with St. Louis. Oh, nope. He was on Cincinnati, going to the Cardinals. Somebody named Bill Paschal. I know he just left Kansas City. He never really had a Major League Baseball card, and so he's just playing on borrowed time. This is why I love this game, because if you look at this guy here, he never had a Major League Baseball card after 1980, and yet here he is in 1983, going 9-17 for Kansas City, and he continues his career with Philadelphia. I think that's a lot of fun. That's one of the things I love about this game. Denny Martinez signs with Oakland El Presidente, 5-year deal. As I mentioned, Oakland just lost a World Series to the Mets. And what do? They go out and they get Dennis Martinez at a price that they could not afford. That's a small market team. And I bet you, if you follow this series, once we get started, Dennis Martinez will kill this team because of his salary, and they'll start trading off other pieces. That always happens, I think. Glenn Hubbard signs a contract with California Angels. He's coming over from Baltimore after being with the Braves. Remember, we started 1980. That was the first year of our sim. So if you're looking at the stats, anything pre-1980 were seasons that we did not sim. Okay, next up is the quiz. Dan Quisenberry. Well, he was traded to Baltimore, and now he is a Montreal Expo. And successful, but not as a closer like he was in real life. Next up is Steve Rogers from Montreal. All those years as a great pitcher for the Montreal Expos. You see, he won 23 games in our first sim season. And now he's a New York Yankee starting as a free agent. Next up is Terry Poole, signs with California after all those years as an Astro. These are the 1984 Topps cards, so we actually have the correct card representing that ball player. I just don't have one for him in an Angels uniform. If you watch our 1981 season, you'll see that I had many cards created by Jeremy DeJong that have the correct team on there, even though they didn't play for that team. So they were made just for our channel. Pretty awesome. Okay, great job by Jeremy. A player named Kip Young, former Detroit Tiger, never played baseball after the 1979 season in real life, and yet he's had a whole career with Cincinnati, and now he's a California Angel pitcher. You may not even remember Kip Young for the Tigers. I do. Of course, as a Tiger fan. I'm 51 years old, so in 1979, I was 8, and I remember Kip Young. Joaquin Andahar signs a 4-year deal with the Boston Red Sox. We tried him on for size at the beginning of the middle of last year. You see, he played for 3 teams, and he was atrocious for us. we just couldn't make it work with him. So I ended up trading him for like a bag of balls. No, I think we cut him, didn't we? And he signed as a free agent. Yes, we cut him. We gave him his release. He signed the rest of the season with the Padres. His contract expired, and then he just signed that 4-year deal. The Houston Astros won the World Series in 1981 in our sim. You'll see here he got a ring, and he won the Gold Glove in 82. So anyway, if you are new to my channel, I mean, you can go back and watch any of these games, any of these seasons. They're all part of my playlist on my main page. Oh, sorry. Skip that. Here we go. Willie Aikens left Kansas City, signed with Boston also. So here come the big hitters. Now, Willie Aikens did have an off year. He only had 9 home runs, despite getting a career high of at-bats for Kansas City. But Kansas City was horrible last year. I think they finished in last place. Their rotation was just putrid. Pete Vukovich goes from the Cardinals to the Mets, and he's not even in the major leagues. He's a AAA pitcher for them, despite making $1.3 million, which is a ton of money at this point of 1984. But I guess he gives the Mets depth. I mean, they did just win the World Series in our sim. John Fulgham also signs with the Mets, and he made the team. He made the team over Vukovich. He went 12-16 for the Cardinals. Cardinals just completely dumped their team. You'll see he walked 107 batters last year. Okay, next up is a trade. Let's get it all here. So here is our first non-Detroit Tiger trade. Bob Pate goes from Seattle to Baltimore. Now, Bob Pate, if you remember, in our 1982 season, when we made the playoffs, we played Seattle in those playoffs, and Bob Pate hit those 2 home runs against us in the ALCS, and that crushed us. He was out of baseball by 1982 in real life, and yet his career continues. In fact, he's actually doing better than ever. And now he'll play for Baltimore, as he was traded to Baltimore for Tommy Gregg and Tommy Hinzo, 2 Tommies. And I don't think they're in the. I think both of these are in the minor leagues. Yeah. So there's Tommy Hinzo in an '88 Topps card, and Tommy Gregg in a minor league card. So pretty cool. All right. Then Al Howland signs with Kansas City. He was with the Giants in Minnesota as a closer, and now he'll be on Kansas City. I don't know, is he a left-handed closer for them? I'm not sure. When we do our division previews coming up in about 2 weeks, we'll know more about that. Okay. And then a big trade. This was a big trade. Okay. Well, I guess we'll go back up one to see. So Dan Pasqua, who didn't play in the majors until 1985. This is Donruss card. That was his rookie year. He's already played 3 years. Look at his age here. He has the best year of his career as an Indian. I think he was drafted by the Indians, and now he gets traded to the Dodgers, and he's not even on the major league squad. That might actually help him, improve as a minor leaguer, so that when he's major league ready. But he hit 22 home runs for the Indians last year and 19 the year before then. So Danny Pasqua going to the Dodgers. He's in AAA. In return, the Dodgers send Billy Ripken. Here he is, a minor leaguer, to the Indians. Mark Grant, former Cy Young Award winner. He's a closer. He's in AA. And for John Burkett, pretty solid major league starter, he's in single A for the Indians. So that's a pretty big trade there. Unfortunately for Dan Pasqua, it doesn't really do much. All right. Then we have a trade. It is Baltimore once again trading with the Chicago Cubs. Former Tiger Dave Stegman, on the White Sox in '84 in real life, gets traded to the Orioles. Dave Stegman was having a great year in 1982 for the Cubs, and then he got injured. You may remember that if you follow this series. That was kind of a big deal. But we did have Dave Stegman as a Tiger when we started our sim, and he got injured many times as well. He's just one of those ball players who can't stay healthy. And so the Cubbies are sending him to Baltimore for Doug DeCenzo and Cam Drew. Steve Mura here signs a free agent contract with the Braves. We gave him a go last year. He sucked. That's part of the reason why we did not make the playoffs back-to-back years, is we could not. That'll do it for 1983. That's part of the reason we just could not piece together a good roster. So now we're going to 1984. You'll see Rick Manning signed a deal with the Orioles, re-signed with the Orioles, I guess I should say. Somebody named Bob Galasso signs with the Royals. He's just some schlub. This is no schlub. Ricky Henderson, former Detroit Tiger in our sim, we traded him away to Houston last year, mostly because he just couldn't get stolen bases like we wanted. He got caught stealing so often. We traded him to Houston. It was hard to let him go because I really like Ricky, of course. Ricky be Ricky, after all. But he signs a contract with the World Series winning New York Mets. And now he is a Metropolitan. That's going to be fun. The Candyman, John Candelaria, signs a 2-year deal with Houston. Actually, he's in AAA. You'll see his 1984 Topps card. Then somebody named Rick Sweet signs with the Expos. He's a real player. He has a baseball card there. In fact, played in the 1981 World Series for the Astros. Okay, then we have another trade. Catcher Gino Petralli. I don't know why the Blue Jays always get rid of their good players. Petralli, as you can see, his 1983 Donruss card there, had a great 1983 for the Blue Jays, and then he gets traded to the Red Sox. I don't get it. In return, the Red Sox give up Doug Strange and Jeff Hewson, a couple middle infielders who are still in the minors. I don't know if that makes them better or not, but you get rid of your starting catcher. Then Joe Sambito signs 1-year deal with the Pirates. Closer, part-time closer for the Astros. You know what? I think there's still some teams that I have not updated the cards in 1984. So I'm going to have to go back and double check that. Everything will be ready for April 1st when the season starts. You have my word on that. Okay, then there was another trade. If you have not followed this series, you may be like, who the hell is Kevin Romberg for Cleveland? He's just some minor league guy who was able to get the starting job for the Indians and turned that into like a pretty good couple of seasons. He had 192 hits, batting .313 in 1982, and still put up a pretty good year in '83 for the Indians. And what do? They turn around and they trade him to Baltimore in division. That is a dumb move. They get a starter in return, Alan Anderson, still a youngster. He's only 20 years old. And they get Ron Karkovice, who was a pretty damn good defensive catcher. And he had some home runs. But he's a single A player, a double A player for the Indians. So, I mean, they're looking to the future. Then catcher John Tamargo signs with Minnesota. His career in baseball was over after the '81 year, but he's still going. That's why I love this game, is like you get players who get second chances at careers. Bump Wills. We love Bump Wills. Wow, I wonder if that whole division just wasn't complete. I'm going to look into that. Bump Wills, we're big fans of. For whatever reason, he's got power in this game. He had 22 home runs in 1982 in our sim last year. You can see his stolen base numbers have gone down. Last year, 11 home runs. Now he's on the Reds, signing a contract. Okay, then we have a trade. Dickie Thon is going to Boston, having a career year for himself in 1983. You'll see in our sim he did really well. Now he's on the Red Sox. In real life, he was on the Astros. I don't remember what year it was that he got hit in the face with the pitch, but that must be around this time. In return, Boston gets a couple schlubby Schlubbersons. And then Lloyd McClendon from Cincinnati. You may think of him as a catcher, but actually he played a little bit everywhere. And he's was a Detroit Tigers coach for a long time. He had one of his best years for the Cincinnati Reds. And what do? They trade him to the Red Sox. And in return, they give up nothing, really. Bernardo Brito. They get Greg Hibbard, who was a pretty decent major league pitcher for the White Sox, I guess. And Ozzie Canseco. Not Jose. You're not getting Jose. He looks like Jose, but you're not getting Jose. Then Ron Esther signs with Cincinnati. He's a Red. He re-signed with Cincinnati. You see his 1984 card there. Second baseman. And then we've got another trade. And this is a 4-player trade. Dave Sachs, yes, Steve Sachs' brother, but in this game, Dave Sachs is the better brother. I mean, he's got a chance to play with the Brewers every day as a DH or catcher, and he's put up some okay numbers, and now he's a Yankee. And I don't know if he's taken the Yankees catching job from Ron Hasse or not. Hasse is an MVP in this sim, I think from 1980 or 81. But now he goes to the Yankees. In return, the Yankees give up Kevin Tapani, pretty damn good starting pitcher in his era. Mark Davis, the hitter, not the reliever that we just saw. And Lenny Harris, third baseman, all minor league players. So the Brewers stocking their minor leagues. And that's it. So that's it for the off-season signings so far. When we get to March 1st, which is where we're at in real life, like in the game, once we get there in real life, every day of the month, I will play a day, and I'll post on the Brainiac Baseball page on YouTube if there were any transactions of note. So you can follow along there. I think that will be a lot of fun. Let's do one more thing here. We'll take a look at the Tigers team as of March 1st, right before spring training starts. And this is our roster, folks. You'll see here, we have Lou Whitaker. We have the Brock Ness Monster. That's his nickname, right? There's Ken Smith, our big signing. He had 39 home runs. Our big trade, I should say. We've got George Brett, who had 17 home runs last year, batted .292, almost batted .300 for us. It's kind of hard to do when you are playing every game yourself. Glenn Wilson is our right fielder. Gibby's our left fielder. Alan Trammell, of course, is at short. Chet Lemons in center field. Our catching duo of Terry Kennedy and Lance Parrish. It's a kind of a lefty-righty thing. I know that is like heresy to not have Lance Parrish as your everyday catcher, but for whatever reason, he sucks in this game. And there's his stats to prove it. He just can't seem to get over the offensive hurdle, and I don't really know how to do that. But his ratings in this game are terrible, and he's got a whole career ahead of him. And I think he hit the most home runs of any Tiger in our 1984 season in real life. And then the rest of our bench is filled out with Doug Baker, Kevin Big Hit Bass, that's his nickname, Jody Reed, which we brought up, And then you can see our minor leaguers here. We got Barry Larkin. I mean, these are all players that we've drafted over this, the years. We've got Matt Williams, and you can see their statistics that they had last year. We got Jesse Barfield. We just can't get him to do anything. So he's like a 5th outfielder, maybe a 6th outfielder. Here's our pitching staff as a reminder. We got Jack. He went 19-9 last year. Dan Petrie couldn't stay healthy. We lost Bert Blyleven for half the season. He started out 7-1, more than half the season, 3/4 of the season. That hurt us. We got Brian Kelly. You probably never heard of him if you're just following this. That's the card I had created for him, the 1983 card. He did well for us, and he's earned a rotation spot. We got Rosie in the final spot. Our closer is Dave Smith, formerly of the Astros. He did play for us for 1.5 years. He's been really good. And he takes over for Roger Weaver, who was our closer. We got Dave Rucker. He is our left-handed specialist out of the pen. He had 12 saves last year. We kind of go with matchups. Carl Willis, future pitching coach for the Tigers. He was a rookie last year for us, pitching 13 games. Did really well. Keith Comstock. I don't know how this guy continues to pitch well. He was out of baseball by 1983, and yet he's still doing well. He's a lefty. He's kind of a loogie for us, lefty one-out guy. Roy Thomas is another player who I picked off the heap. He hadn't played in our sim in the majors other than 1980, the first year. We picked him up, and he pitched really well for us for the most part. And yes, guys, it is the creeper. Paul Gibson, probably going to make the team out of spring training. We still have his baseball cards that we created for sale. If you're interested, later on in the preseason, we'll let you know how you can actually get your own 1983 cards. We still have some for sale that were created by Paul DeJong. And then the rest of our players who are coming up the pipe here. We got Doug Drabeck. We got Danny Jackson, who got a little bit of PT last year. Oh, Tom Filer. Can't forget about Tom Filer. That's the card we had created for the channel. He's not great, but he helped us when we needed him most. You see we got Jeff Montgomery. We got David Cohn, David Wells, Chuck Finley. I mean, we've drafted really well our minor league pitchers. So we've got a good future ahead of us, but that's most likely what our roster is going to be starting the season, our lineup and our pitching staff. So I don't know how this Ken Smith guy is going to do, because in real life he was out of baseball by 1984. This is his most recent card. It was a 1983 Flair. So I don't know what we're going to get with him. He doesn't go to arbitration until 1985, so we're not paying a ton for him for the next 2 years. So if he sucks, if he doesn't live up to the 39 home runs, then it's not much of a loss. It's just maybe hurts our team a little bit. So, okay, guys, that is going to conclude this preseason video where we looked at all of the offseason transactions. We are going to come back, as I showed here, on March 6th for the American League East Division preview, where we'll look at all the teams individually and see if our team has a chance this year. We've won the division only once. That was the 1982 season in which we lost to Seattle to go to the World Series. So a real bummer. All right, that is going to do it. I appreciate everyone watching. Like and or subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, put them down below. There will be contests. We'll be giving away stuff just like we did last year. We'll have all kinds of fun stuff in store for the 1984 season, the season in which the Detroit Tigers won the World Series. They beat the Padres. So we have to live up to that. That is and was always the goal. And if we play beyond the 1984 season, I haven't decided yet. I don't know. I think I've always given my teams 6 years. When I started playing a baseball mogul season, I try to say within 6 years I need to have a World Series ring. So if we do not actually win the World Series like the Tigers did in 1984, I'm going to feel terrible about that. But then maybe we'll play one more year. to see if I can pull it out. So that's going to do it for today's episode. We'll see you, what was that, on March 6th for the American League East Division preview. Until then, everyone, have a great day.